We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Bezom and Bezom Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 52b. The Brisa over here continues with Rav Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion. He says, "Ein podin es hashvuin yosar kadei demehem." Unlike the Tanna Kama, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that we do not redeem captives if it's more than their actual value. Let's say that they would be sold on the slave market. Why? Mipnei tikun ha'olam, for the betterment of society. If you're going to pay more than their value, then they're going to take advantage. Those who are taking these people captives, the captors, will take advantage. Rashi over here says, again, if you're going to do that, then the people who take these women captive are going to be accustomed to asking for more money, and therefore Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, we don't give more than their value. And the Gemara now infers, it sounds like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says that if it is at their value, if they're asking for redemption money at the value of the woman, so then you would redeem her. Even though that redemption, that cost is more than the ksuba. In other words, you might say there should be a limit, because the entire idea of redeeming her, that the husband is obligated, is written into the ksuba. So maybe it shouldn't be more than the ksuba. Maybe he shouldn't have to redeem beyond that amount. And the Gemara says, or a mini, we have a contradiction to that. It says, Nishbis v'hayu mevakshim mimenu ad asar b'chsubasa. This is the Tanna Kama. She's captured and they want about 10 times the amount of her ksuba. So Pam Rishona Poda, the first time he does redeem her, Mikan v'elech ratza Poda, ratza eino Poda, but from then on, if he wants to redeem her, he could. If he doesn't, here the Tanna Kama is talking not 10 times more than her value, but 10 times more than the value of the ksuba. And Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Im haya pirkona keneged ksubasa, if her redemption is corresponding to the value of her ksuba, Poda, then he redeems her. Again, you see that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is tying it not to her value, but to the value of the ksuba. And im laveino Poda, if not, then he doesn't redeem her. And so the Gemara answers, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel trei kulei islay. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel actually has two leniencies over here. He applies both standards. We'll take a look at Rashi over here, keneged ksubasa, if it corresponds to the value of her ksuba, so then again, that was the opinion of Shimon ben Gamliel, aval yoser michsubasa, but if it's more than a ksuba, lo, he doesn't have to redeem her. Deloye tafel chamer mino ikr, because the tafel does not have to be more than the ikr. In other words, the accompanying thing doesn't have to be more than the main thing. Tanai ksuba, yes, ksuba, you're not going to say that the condition of the ksuba is more than the actual ksuba. What the value of the ksuba is, so there's a condition in the ksuba to redeem her, that can't be more than the actual ksuba. And so the Gemara answers, trei kulei. Actually, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is applying two leniencies. Lo yoser al demeh. What he's saying is as follows: you don't pay more than her value. Shehi ru'il limacher b'shuk, how she would be sold on the marketplace as a slave, and also v'lo yoser al ksubas, and you also don't go more than the ksuba. We don't know which one of those is more. You're always going to go less than both of those. Therefore, there's two leniencies for the husband in terms of the fact that he doesn't redeem her for more than that amount. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. We said in the Mishnah, loksa chayiv l'raposa, that let's say she becomes sick, so he does have to heal her. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, this is a Tosefta, Almona nizonos minichse yisomin, and Almona, she gets mizonos from the property of the orphans, utzricha refuah, and let's say she needs healing, let's say she's sick, hareike mizonos, that has the same status as mizonos, it has the same status as sustenance, also it comes from the property of the orphans. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, refuah sheyesh lo kitzvah, if you're talking about a healing that has a set amount, it's not like a unlimited amount of healing money, so they're nisrapes, so there, we say that the refuah comes michsubasa. It actually comes from her ksuba. However, she'ein lo kitzvah, but let's say there is no end to it, so that already harehi kemizonos. That's already considered like mizonos. It has the same status as the sustenance that the yisomim have to provide, and therefore, again, they're going to provide it minichse yisomim from the property of the yisomim. Rashi over here says, utzricha refuah harehi kemizonos v'im tzricha refuah. If she requires refuah, harehi refuah kemizonos. The refuah is considered like mizonos. The tarvayu chiyusaninu, because both of them are considered sustaining her, keeping her alive. That's the opinion of the Tanna Kama. And Rav Shimon ben Gamliel again makes a distinction between refuah sheyesh la kitzvah and she'ein la kitzvah. Rashi says mizonos ein lam kitzvah. Mizonos is something there's no set amount to it. So hilkach refuah sheyesh la kitzvah. Therefore, a refuah that there is a set amount to it, a set cost. She'ein a chola tadir. She's not going to be sick all the time. So ein a bichlal mizonos. So that's not considered as part of mizonos. Again, if you have a situation of refuah sheyesh la kitzvah, it is a set thing. It is not something that is going to be ongoing like mizonos. So therefore, in that situation, the payment will actually come from her ksuba. But again, if it's ein la kitzvah, it is kimizonos. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Asu hakozas dam be'eretz Yisrael kirafua she'ein lo kitzva. They said that if you have a situation of bloodletting in Eretz Yisrael, bloodletting is considered a refuah she'ein lo kitzva. It's considered a situation where there is no set amount, it's ongoing, and therefore it's going to be considered like mizonos. And again, if it's considered like mizonos, so then the orphans would have to take on that cost. They would have to support that. And the Gemara continues, Krive de Rabbi Yochanan havelu itas abba dahavas tzricha refuah. The relatives of Rabbi Yochanan, they had the wife of their father. She needed refuah. And so the question was, do they have to pay for this? Or again, does it come out of her ksuba? So kol yom asal lakami de Rabbi Yochanan, every day they came before Rabbi Yochanan. So Amar Lahu, so he said to them, Izilu kotzu le'medi l'rofe. What you should do is make a set amount together with a doctor, turn it into something that is a set amount. And if you do that, so then actually it's going to be considered a refuah sheyesh lakitzva. It's not going to be considered like mizonos. And then you'll be able to have her deducted from her ksuba. You won't have to pay anymore. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Asinu atzmeinu ka'orchei hadayonin. Now we're treating ourselves like these lawyers of the court. In other words, I really shouldn't have done this. Here I am on their behalf. I'm trying to give them a loophole in order to get them out of supporting her. That's not something I should have done. And the Gemara continues, Meikara my savar levasof my savar. So originally, what did Rabbi Yochanan think that he was allowed to help them? And at the end, what is he saying? That he really should not have helped them and given them this advice. And the Gemara explains, Meikara savar, originally he thought to himself, Umi basar chalo tesalam, you can't hide yourself from your own flesh. These are his own relatives, he should help them out. Well, levasov savar, but then at the end he thought to himself, Adam chashav shani, somebody who's important like him should not get involved in this way in terms of helping out. In a court case, the person has to be a little more objective in such a situation. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Lo kasav lo benin dichrin dihavu lechi minoi. Let's say he does not write into the ksuba the standard line which says, the male children which you have from me, Inun yirsun kesef ksubasech yeser al chulakon dimachu, and they should inherit the money of your ksuba more than the portion that they're inheriting together with their brothers. Chayev, he is still obligated, they get that larger inheritance, shehu tanai bezin, because that is considered a condition of the court. In other words, the situation over here is as follows. Let's say he wrote a large amount into her ksuba, and then she dies, so she never collects the ksuba, so that ksuba goes back to the husband. So let's say this very large amount, now this husband is going to die, and he's going to give it to his yarshim, he's going to give it to the sons who inherit him, but he might have sons from her, and he might have sons from other women as well. So she doesn't want that money that was promised her, which she never collected because she died, she doesn't want that money to go to all of his sons, she wants that money to go specifically to her sons, to the male children that she has had, and normally that's what you write into the ksuba, that ksuba, the amount, it goes to her children. So the Mishnah is saying, even if that wasn't written into the ksuba, still her children are going to be yoresh, they're going to inherit that amount. Similarly, the Mishnah continues, Benon nukvan dihaven lechi minoi. Let's say the girls who we have together, so normally you write into there, you have yon yosvan bevesi, they're going to sit in my house, umitzan min chasai, and they'll be supported from my property, ad tilkachun leguvern, until they are taken by husbands, until they get married. Let's say that line is left out. Same thing, the Mishnah says, chayiv, he's still obligated to provide that, shehu tanai bezin, because that's considered to be a condition of the Bezdin. And the Mishnah continues, another line that's usually in the Ksuba, Ate Yosva Bevesi, you're going to sit in my house, Umitzana Minachasai Kol Yimei Megar Manusayich, and you'll be supported from my property all of the time that you are a widow, Kol Yimei Megar Manusayich Bevesi, as long as you're a widow in my house, you're going to be supported again from my property. The same thing the Mishnah says, Chayev, that is still an obligation, Shu Tanai Bezdin, that's considered to be a condition of the Bezdin. And the Mishnah continues, Kachayu Anshe Yerushalayim Kosvin. This is what the people of Yerushalayim wrote into their ksuba. And Anshe Galil Hayu Kosvin Ka Anshe Yerushalayim. And also the people of the Galil, they also used to write in the line just like those of Yerushalayim. But Anshe Yehuda Hayu Kosvin, but the people of Yehuda, they would write in the line as follows, Anshe Yirtzu Hayorshin Litein Lach Ksubasech. Until the inheritors, until the Yarshim, they want to give you your ksuba. That's the point in time where you will be supported until. Lafikach, therefore, according to the way the Anshe Yehuda wrote it, Imratzu Yarshin, if the Imratzu Yarshin nosen laksubasa, if the Yarshim want, they could just give her ksuba payment, upotronos on that patters, and then they no longer have to support her in such a situation. And the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, why did they make this takana? Why did they write into the ksuba that the male children that she has, they get to inherit her ksuba, that amount they get, it doesn't get distributed to all of his yarshin in a situation where she dies. And the reason is, the reason is, this way it will encourage people to write over a nice dowry for his daughter, just like the inheritance that the son is going to get. In other words, we we want to encourage people, we want to encourage fathers to give a large dowry to their daughters, but they're not going to do that if that dowry is going to go be transferred to their son-in-law and then get dispersed among all of the son-in-law's yarshim, even ones that are not coming from this particular father over here of the daughter. So then they're not going to want to do that. So in order to encourage it, they're going to write a big dowry, and they're guaranteed that that dowry not only will go into the marriage, not only will be taken by the husband of whoever marries this person's daughter, but also if she has any children, if she has any male children, they're ultimately going to inherit that dowry. So this will encourage them to give over a large dowry to their daughter. And the Gemara says, Umika midi, but is there such a thing? The Rachmana Amar Bara Leiros. The Torah says that the son is the one who inherits the father. Barata lo Teros. The daughter generally does not inherit the father. V'yasu Rabbanan Masakni the Teros. And now the Rabbanan come along and they make a takana that here the daughter gets a big inheritance because the dowry is effectively like an inheritance. And therefore the Rabbanan are coming along and changing something in the Torah. They're making a way for the daughter to be able to inherit her father. And the Gemara says, no, Barato Hanami Doraiso, it's not true. Even when it comes to the daughter, that's also mentioned in the Torah, that the daughters inherit from their father. Dechsiv, like the Pasuk says, the Pasuk in Yirmiyahu, it says, Kechu Nashim Vaholidu Banim Uvanos. It says, take wives, let them give birth to boys and girls. Ukechu Livnechem Nashim. And it says, take for your sons wives. Ve'espinoseichem Tenula Nashim. And your daughters you should give over to husbands. And so now the Gemara understands the Pasuk. Bishlama Banim, I understand by his sons, Biyade, so that's within his power. He's able to find wives for his sons. So Kaimi, Biyade Kaimi, that's in his possession. Ela Benasa bin Seba, when it comes to his daughters, Mi Kaimon Biyade, is that something that he's even able to do? And so therefore the Gemara says, so what does it mean to say that you're going to marry off your daughters? How do you marry off your daughters? And so the Gemara says, Hakamash Malano, what the Pasuk is teaching us is as follows. The Nilbishav and Nichsav and Esav Lamidi, you have to give her good clothes, you have to give her a substantial amount. Ki hechi de kafsi alav, in order that people will jump upon her, will go and want to marry her, that it'll be an encouragement for people to marry the daughter. And therefore you see in this pasuk this concept of a dowry, this idea that the father gives over a large amount to his daughter. And the Gemara says, Viad Kama, so until how much? How much is already too much to give over as a dowry? Abaye v'Rava dami tarvayo, Abaye and Rava, they both say, Ad li'isr nichse, it's until 1/10 of his property, 1/10 of his worth, so to speak, that amount he can give to the dowry. But the Gemara continues, V'yema da'av leiros, da'bal lo leiros, but according to that logic, if the reason over here is we're trying to encourage fathers to give large dowries to their daughters, so then that portion, the dowry portion, that should be inherited by the daughter's male children. That makes sense. We're encouraging him to give a large dowry to make that part of the ksuba so that his grandsons will eventually, he'll give a large amount because his grandsons will eventually inherit it. But let's say the portion of the ksuba that the husband was going to give the wife, and now the wife died, and that portion goes back to the husband, why should that go to her male children? And so the Gemara explains, no, im kain av nami mimna v'lo kasav. If that portion, if the portion of the husbands that he was going to give his wife, again, let's say he divorced her or died, if that portion did not go to the children that she had, so then the father wouldn't want to give generously. If the husband's not going to give generously to his sons that he has with this wife, so then the father of this wife, the father of this daughter is not going to want to give generously in terms of the dowry. So again, this encourages him to give a large dowry if he knows that this amount is going to eventually go to his grandsons, in addition to the amount of the ksuba that will also go to his grandsons. But the Gemara continues, but why don't we say as follows? If you have a situation where the father gave a large dowry, so then the husband will write into the ksuba that the male children that he has with this wife of his, that they will inherit this amount. But let's say the father did not give over a large dowry, so why should the husband write this in? Why should he say that the male children that I have with you are going to inherit the ksuba? Why should that be? There wasn't even a large dowry in this situation. And so the Gemara says, lo plug Rabbanan. The Rabbanan did not make distinctions. Once they already said that you write this into the ksuba, it is regardless of the size of the dowry. Either way, it is going to go to, again, to the male children that he has with this woman. And the Gemara continues, Basbein habonim nami teros. But if that's the case, if the reason why we're saying that the amount in the ksuba goes to her sons is because we want to encourage her father to give a large dowry, so let's say it's not sons, let's say that she only has daughters with his husband, the daughter also should inherit the ksuba. She should also get the dowry, and it shouldn't go to his sons that he has from some other marriage with some other woman. Again, that will encourage this father to give a nice dowry. And so to that the Gemara says, Kenachal Shavi Rabbanan. No, when the Rabbanan instituted this idea idea that the ksuba goes to the benin dichron, they wanted to make it work in the same way that inheritance works. So therefore, since inheritance goes to the male children, it goes to the sons. Therefore, over here, this halacha that it goes to her children, it will only be her sons. But the Gemara says, okay, bas ben habanos teres. Well, what if it's a daughter among other daughters? Let's say this husband over here, he has a daughter with her, and he has a daughter with other wives. He has daughters with other wives. So we should say this particular daughter should inherit the ksuba. And again, that would really be like regular nachla, because a daughter does inherit if there are no sons. And to that, the Gemara says, lo plug rabbanan. The rabbanan did not want to make distinctions. Again, they said it's going to be halacha by the males, by the boys. They're going to inherit any boys that she has with this person, with this man. They will inherit the ksuba. It does not apply to the banos. It does not apply to the daughters. And the Gemara says, v'tigvi metaltali. Well, this idea of ksubas benin dichron, you're collecting the ksuba, maybe you should collect it even from movable property. Why is it that they only collect the land? And to that, the Gemara says, k'chsuba shavi rabbanan. The Gemara, the rabbanan wanted to say that it should work just like the ksuba. Just like the ksuba, let's say she's collecting the ksuba, she does not collect from metaltalin. So too, if she dies and it goes to her husband, so then again, when it gets inherited by his sons, by her sons, it's going to work like ksuba, and it's not going to be from metaltalin. And the Gemara says, titrof mi meshabdi. So okay, let them actually collect then from the chasim mishubadim. Let's say there's leaned property. And to that, the Gemara says, yirsun tanan. No, it says in the Mishnah that it's an inheritance. When you have an inheritance, if they're inheriting this ksuba, so an inheritance you don't collect from the chasim mishubadim. Let's say property was sold. We don't say there's a lien on the property, and the yarshim get to take that property. So again, that's why that is not going to apply. And the Gemara says, ve'ema afagav deleka moser dinar. Well, maybe we should say this halacha applies even though there's not even an extra dinar. Let's say all he leaves over is the ksuba. In that situation, we actually say that the halacha does not apply. But why do we say that? We should say even in that situation, this halacha should apply, and her sons should get it. And the Gemara says, no, b'makom dekamiakra nachla dorais. If you have a situation where if you did this, there's going to be no dorais inheritance at all, so lo takinu rabbanan. In such a situation, the rabbanan did not institute this halacha over here of the ksubas benin dichrin. Rashi over here says, titrof mi meshavdi. First, the Gemara suggested if it's like ksuba, so let them collect from the chasim mishubadim. Ichich ksuba shavi. If you're really saying that it's like ksuba, so metaltalin is not mishubad for ksuba, but nechasim mishubadim is. Well, the kamon pligi baberesh paragafapi. This is a machlokas regarding nechasim mishubadim later on, and so therefore, why don't they inherit? Why isn't there a possibility that they can inherit from the chasim mishubadim? And to that, the Gemara says, Yirsun Tanan, it uses the language of Yerusha. Ve'in Yerusha b'mishubadim. There's no such thing as inheritance. You don't collect in the chasim mishubadim. Let's say the father dies and he has property that he sold off. That's not part of the Yerusha. Ve'ema afagav deleka moser dinar. Well, let's say this halacha applies even though there's nothing else that's left over. Leka moser dinar yezer al shtei ksubas. Let's say you have two ksubas. He has two wives. There are different values of each ksuba. So normally, again, the halacha is that the sons from each particular wife, they get that ksuba. But let's say there's no other money besides that. So yitlu ksubas imam. They should still, each one should take the ksuba of their mother. Kedin ksubas benin dichron. Each set of sons should take the ksubas benin dichron of their mother. Why do we say there's regular Yerusha? Alama tanan beperek mishayanase. Why does it say later on? Ein sham ela shtei ksubas cholken b'shaveh. That if all you have is the value of the two ksubas, so then they divide equally. You treat it like regular nachala. And to that, the Gemara says, "Makom demeikar nachla doraisa." If you have demiakar nachla doraisa, if you have a situation where it would uproot the regular inheritance, mishum nachla derabanan. If all there is the nachla derabanan, meaning this ksubas benin dichron, lo tikon rabanan nachla didhu lakor nachlas chaluka shava legamri shimin Torah. We're not going to do this nachla of derabanan and totally uproot the concept of equal division that the Torah has. Hilkach, therefore, kika moser dinar. If there's an extra dinar beyond the ksubas, sheachluku b'shava, they can divide that dinar equally. They can fulfill the nachla doraisa, benachla doraisa. Then in that case, yitlu elu ksubas iman. Then everyone will take the ksuba of their mothers. V'elu ksubas iman. These set of sons will take the ksuba of their mother, and these ones will take the ksuba of their mother. Mishum nachla derabanan v'ilolo. Then they'll do the nachla derabanan. But otherwise, if there's no way to fulfill the nachla doraisa, you're not going to do the nachla derabanan. And the Gemara continues, Rav Papa Yasik le livrei bei Abasura. Rav Papa, he arranged a wedding for his son at the house of Abasura. In other words, his son married into the family of Abasura. Azal lemichtav laksubasa, he went to write up the ksuba. Shama Yehuda bar Meremar heard that Rav Papa was coming. Nafak asis chazile, so he went out in order to greet Rav Papa. Kimatu lepischa, but when they got to the door of the house, hava kamifter minei. So Yehuda bar Meremar wanted to depart from him. He wanted to leave. Amar leis, Rav Papa said to him, Neil mar bahadoi, why doesn't the master enter together with me? Why are you leaving? We'll take a look at Rashi over here. Be Abba Sura, Chum of Hoya. So Abba Sura was actually the father-in-law of Rav Papa, meaning Rav Papa married the daughter of Abba Sura. Vehezi Rav Papa livno achos ishto, and Rav Papa was also marrying his son off to the sister of his own wife, meaning he was marrying his son off also to another daughter of Abba Sura. Rashi goes on to quote Gemaras that reference this idea. Azor Rav Papa leves avi hanara lichtov ksubas, and now Rav Papa went to the house of the father of the young girl in order to write up the ksuba. V'sham yivsok avia v'yichtov la b'nidunyasa mashi yichtov, and there the father would determine what dowry he was going to give to this daughter. Kimatu lepischa de Abba Sura, when they got to the door of Abba Sura's house, have a mifter minei Yehuda notal rishus me Rav Papa lachzor lachor. If Yehuda was taking permission, Yehuda bar Meremar was taking permission from Rav Papa to turn around to go away. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph.